Everybody, welcome to Hey Pastor, have you seen this? My name is Rick. I'm senior pastor of Allen Creek Community Church, and this is our chance to comment on some material, some content that's making its rounds on the internet. And you get to send that to us, and you'll get a Christian worldview take on something that's hot in the news, something that revolves around God, the Bible, Christianity, Christian morality, or that kind of thing. So if you have something you'd like to send it to social@ac3.org, you can send it to us and we will comment on it. And this is actually a submission that comes to us from Lynn. So thank you, Lynn, for sending this in. So let's comment on this one, Trixie's coming out story.
When I told my brother I was gay, we were driving in a truck. I was in the passenger seat, he was driving. He was like, "So you got any girlfriends at school?" And I said, "No." And he says, "You don't really notice the girls at school?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Are you not into girls?" And I said, "No," before I could even think about it.
Wow.
And then it would pause, and then he goes, "Are you into guys?" And I go, "Yes." And we're both staring at the road. No one looks at anyone, right? And then there's a long pause, and I go, "Are you mad?" Because I was like so scared. I was like 18.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, "No." And he said something about tomatoes, which was crazy. He goes, "I don't like tomatoes. I think eating tomatoes kind of gross, but I'm never going to tell people not to eat tomatoes."
Oh, my God. What a mensch.
Which I thought was mind blowing.
What a mensch.
And then I went, "I thought you would be mad at me." And I didn't even look at him. He didn't look at me. He reaches over, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "You're still my brother. None of that matters."
Oh.
When I told my brother I was gay, we were driving in a truck. I was in the passenger seat, he was driving. He was like, "So you got any girlfriend?"
So, yeah, so the story of coming out and that you're same-sex attracted, and then I guess specifically as this guy mentions the reaction that his brother has, his brother actually makes an argument in favor of why same-sex attraction should be essentially no big deal, and he says it's like the difference between what did he say? Something about what tastes good. You like tomatoes. I like something else. So first of all, I think we should really dive into the empathy of the difficulty of imagining someone who is same-sex attracted, understanding that is not a majority sexual wiring, and then thinking about the shame and the horror of telling that to someone. And so we've got a whole, sort of cottage industry built around the difficulty and the drama involved in what we call coming out of the closet, out of the secrecy of saying I have same-sex attraction. So I think we should have a great deal of sympathy for someone who is same-sex attracted and how they deal with that. But the next stage in the process is the place where Christian morality then just kind of comes up against it. Christian morality agrees at the point of the deep empathy that we have for people who are in difficult situation regarding, let's say, their wiring, their internal compulsions, and whatever that they might have that comes to them naturally as an obstacle to following the narrow way of Jesus. Okay, so great empathy for that and compassion for that. But then the solution. So on the solution side, this person's brother was, hey, one set of sexual choices is no different than the other. It's like the difference between liking red versus liking blue. And that's where Christian morality parts ways. So Christian morality says that God's design for sex is a natural view that flows out of our biology, that humans are made male and female, that gender complement is something that God made and designed, and it's good. But beyond that, because it's just one thing to say, well, men and women are compatible sexually, and therefore that's the way they should go together in any combination. No, further, God limits the expression of this incredibly beautiful biological complement to one man, one woman inside a lifetime covenant. So that is a very, very narrow sexual ideal, and I think every Christian should recognize it. And because they recognize that its narrowness, we recognize that nobody, not this person, Trixie, or anybody else, comes into that design with every part of themselves in agreement with it. And that's just so important, because here's Trixie saying, my whole wiring is I like guys. I'm a guy and I'm attracted to guys. And so I don't come into the Christian sexual design with a natural compatibility. Well, guess what? I don't either at the level of the monogamy piece. I mean, I just know this. I mean, this is something that we shouldn't be ashamed to admit. We say there's a part of me that doesn't agree with the biblical design in some other way. Think about it. The biblical design has like not just one layer to it, like heteronormativity. It has about 6 layers to it. It has a covenantal aspect to it. Well, if you're currently in a living situation with someone and you have no covenant between the two of you, you are no more fully engaged and engrossed in God's sexual design than is someone in a same-sex relationship. In the sense that you have not brought this part of Jesus' sexual model into your sex life. So there's a covenantal piece, which means there's this idea of covenant that lives between the man and the woman. There's the fact that it's a man and a woman, not a man and a man or a woman and a man. There's the fact that it's loving. And some people marry for convenience and they grow hard-hearted. And Jesus said that's what leads to divorce. So God's design is that there's love in between the man and the woman, soft-hearted affection. Then some people don't bring the monogamous piece. You know, God said the two shall become one flesh. Well, we all know that there are people who feel that it's part of their innate sexual wiring that there should be 3 or 4 in their sexual union. So, so we should recognize right out of the gate that in some sense, the good news of the narrowness is that nobody measures up. So then the idea that Trixie feels uniquely judged by the Christian church or by the Christian model because it's heteronormative, which it is, should not necessarily say to Trixie that she's uniquely called out in this. We're all called out by Jesus' sexual marriage model. But in fact, as Trixie comes into relationship with God, this is one of the things that she would lay on the altar. She would say that if Jesus gets to be leader of my life, he gets to be leader of my sexuality. And so my same-sex attraction then gets to be subordinated under the leadership of Christ. Now, that I think we should also admit is a secondary thing. So what Trixie does is she comes to Christ's first process is the fact that she is a rebel against a good and moral God. And what was once said to me that made so much sense is that, you know, somebody doesn't need Jesus because they're gay. We need Jesus because we're lawbreakers. And if you went through the Old Testament moral law and you went like, no other gods before me, do not take the Lord's name in vain, honor your father and mother, do not murder by Jesus' definition. You get like 6 commandments before you get to the sex command. And I'm already a lawbreaker 6 different ways against the holiness and beauty and goodness of God before I ever get to the ways I violate God's sexual design. And I think if Trixie was honest about that, she'd say, yeah, you know, I'm a liar. I have failed in courage. I have failed in whatever. I'm not Trixie, so I don't know. But I bet you if she was honest. So then she processed her need before Jesus through the lens of being in deep existential need as a sinner, as someone who rebels against God, who has missed the mark of God's goodness and holiness. Then come running to Christ for his unconditional love, who loves everybody, no matter what our proclivities, no matter what our inclinations, whether they are, you know, in the direction of biblical morality or against biblical morality, in all of us. And the Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 7, I do not do the very thing I want to do. The very thing I agree is a good thing to do. I don't do that. I don't want to do it. I want to do the very thing I don't want to do. Well, how is this not like, you know, Trixie and me and everybody else? Puts us all in the same boat. So we bring those broken desires to Jesus for healing and then for power to walk in newness of life. Can someone walk in Jesus, same-sex attracted? They absolutely can. And I would turn Trixie on, if she was interested in Christ, to those brave side B Christians who wrestle with same-sex attraction as they follow Jesus in sexual purity and according to Christ's sexual design. So there's some really, really great and beautiful stories of that. And I think those are heroes in the faith. And Trixie could be one of them. I am sure that Jesus calls her into that kind of brave followership. So really a difficult issue, and more to say about that. But, you know, we do have our investigations course. You can always check that out. We put that out online, and we talk about some of these really, really difficult things. All right. But until next time, we'll see you on Pastor, Have You Seen This?